Today I wanted to start my video by just saying thank you to everyone for watching the first couple of episodes of this new series I'm starting. The feedback has been really positive and encouraging, and so thank you all for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, let me encourage you to take just a minute to do that as we get started here with this episode of Sunday Synth Chat. I thought it might be interesting to talk about why I have the synths that I have in my studio, and I'll give you a quick rundown on what I've got, but more importantly, why do I have each of those? Over the last couple of years, my view has evolved on what the reasons should be that you own a synthesizer, or really probably any piece of gear for that matter. Kind of moved through a collecting stage with the idea that I could still use all the gear that I was collecting. But just recently in the last few months, I've more come to understand that I need to be a little more efficient in use of funds and use of space. And so I've actually sold a number of keyboards out of the studio. Recently I upgraded my computer. The one I was using was nearly 10 years old, a Mac Mini, and running like a champ. I mean, it was still doing a great job for me, and we're actually still using it here in the house, but there were a few things about it that were starting to give me some warning signs that soon it may be unreliable. Things were just starting to slow down, so I decided that I would try to turn some of my synthesizers into cash and replace the computer, and I think that's been a good decision. It's interesting because this isn't exactly the topic I meant to be on, but I had a Mac Mini, a late 2012 model, and over the last few years I had put a new solid state drive in it, as well as upgraded the memory, and it was running really well, like I said. So now I've just bought the new M1 Mac Mini with it's a 1 terabyte solid state drive, and I got the 16 gigs of unified memory with it. And to be real honest with you, I can't tell any difference in the performance speed. That being said, I've had fewer issues with Pro Tools locking up on me mid-song, so I think it was the right move. Just I was expecting a more dramatic difference, I think. So anyway, back on topic. Some of you may have seen my Korg story video, and in that I talk about in late 2019 I ended up with a Korg Trinity Pro X, and collecting Korg after that just kind of became something I did. I was using all of it in recording, but I was starting to pick up some of the old gear that I had not been able to use or have when I was younger and really couldn't afford it. I won't say that got out of control, but I had several keyboards of the same vintage and really filling the same purpose, if you will. So again, I decided recently that may not be the best use of my funds. But I started thinking about what I needed to sell and what I needed to keep, and it occurred to me maybe I should have a little bit of purpose in choosing what I chose. Why would I keep this keyboard versus selling it? So the keyboards just to my right over here, I've got the Korg Wavestate. I'm sorry, I don't have the Korg Wavestate. I have the Korg Op6, which I have because I really have developed a fondness for FM synthesis. So it was Korg and it was FM, and I really liked the interface, the ease that it gives you for editing, and so that's why I decided to get that keyboard and why I still have it. I haven't moved on from that one, and it will stay in my studio unless they release a 61 key version, in which case it will be full speed ahead and upgrading to the 61 key. I also have the, over here to my right, the Arturia Micro Freak. That one, I got it just because I liked the look of it, honestly. It was actually a Christmas gift. But there's a lot of experimenting that you can do with that synth. Additionally, it has a really nice vocoder. So I had a Korg R3, which I primarily also had for the vocoder, but ended up selling that because the one in the vocoder in the Micro Freak is good enough that I was comfortable sticking with that one. And it's enough of a different type of synthesizer that the R3 really didn't have a place left in the studio. And then I have the Arturia Keylab 61 on the next shelf down as a controller. It has all kinds of flexibility as far as the programming goes. Additionally, I love the key bed. It's a very well-made controller keyboard. And then under that is the Korg Trinity. I would say that I have it just for the workstation capabilities, and that's true in part, but it does have a kind of a sentimental place in my heart. So that's ultimately why that keyboard is here, and it will remain here for that reason. Then moving on to the back, I've got a Korg DW6000 on a top rack back there, sitting over the Korg M1. The DW6000 was a repair job that Dad and I did. The idea was to repair it and sell it. I tested the waters in selling it. Really didn't get any interest at all. It's a little bit rough cosmetically, but we've got it up and playing really well. And it's an interesting synth. Like it's a fun one to just sit down and edit parameters and see what you can come up with. It's got all digital waveforms in it, and it's just a little different than most of the other stuff I have. So that's why that one is still here. The Korg M1 I bought just because it's a classic. I love the Universe patch. There's a lot of things about it that I love. So that one I plan to keep for a long time as well. It was also another repair job that turned out to be a lot simpler than what I expected when I first got it. Short version of the story is basically I got it and did a sysx dump into it, and it worked fine. There had been a battery low warning on the screen. The battery had been changed. Previous owner couldn't get anything to work after that as far as getting the battery low to go away. So that's all it took was a restore, and it's good to go. We just replaced the value slider in it a week before last, maybe, or last week. I don't remember. But that was the only other thing that was wrong with it. The value slider wouldn't work. So that was probably an hour and a half job to get in there and out. Anyway, that's why I have the M1. So then behind me, I kind of have my analog section. I've got the Moog Grandmother up there on top of that rack. I bought it because I wanted a Moog. Whether that's the right reason to buy something or not, it's honest. That was when I was first starting to explore analog synthesis. So I knew that I'd like to have something from Moog. It was the most affordable thing at the time because I also bought the Korg Prologue at the same time with it. So I had been toying around with the idea of getting a Moog Matriarch, but ultimately decided on, instead of one, get the polysynth and the mono synth in two separate keyboards. A decision I'm still glad I made to this day. And then, I can't turn the right way. Then I have the Korg Poly 6, which you've seen a few videos on, sitting back there. That one was another repair job that it showed up in a box of parts. I bought it for fairly cheap. I think I probably have ended up spending more on it than what it's actually worth. But at this point, it's a keeper for a long term. So, looking around, I feel. Oh, and I also have. I have an O1W Pro X over here to the side, which purportedly was Michael W. Smith's touring keyboard, and so I will never get rid of that one either. There'll be naysayers about that fact since I can't verify it with him, but the story was, I feel like, legitimate, and it was not used as a selling point to sell it. So anyway, so that's over here. So that's another sentimental keep that will stay with me forever. But point is, across these synthesizers, the various synthesizers, I can check a lot of the boxes of the different types of sounds that I want to use. And so honestly, that's why I have the ones that I have. Thinking about anything else I might want to add to the studio sound-wise at some point, there's really nothing else. I mean, I could do like The Korg Modwave, for example, might be a fun addition, but at this point I have enough software synthesizers in addition to all this hardware that I just don't see the need to bring anything else in at this point. Honestly, if I could go get anything right now, it would probably be, I would imagine, a Prophet 5. I think that would just be a nice keyboard to have. I don't have anything from Sequential in the studio, and I would like to have a Prophet 5 at some point. So again, that's what I have hardware-wise. I use the analog a lot. I'm using it a lot on the album I'm working on right now. I'm very excited about my change in sound from what I've done in years past to where I'm going. It's not a wildly different sound, but a lot of different instrumentation than I normally have done in the past. So I'm excited for that to get completed and come out. I'm excited for everyone to be able to hear it. But those analog synths are getting a lot of use, as well as the Op6. So one question I've heard several times from people is when they've asked how many keyboards I have. Like right now I have 10. And the question's always asked, how many keyboards do you actually need? I've thought for a long time a good answer is, well, how many are there? But I think I've come to realize that the correct answer would be, I have the ones I need. So I will continue to evaluate what's in the studio as time goes along, and if something is just not being used or falling by the wayside or taking up unnecessary space, then I don't have any reason to keep it and not move on from it. Again, aside from the couple that I have an attachment to that will stay with me. But I think it's a good exercise to just not constantly, but periodically assess what you have, what gear you have, decide, is that gear still good for me? Is it right for me? Is it filling a need? Is it helping me be a better musician? Is it helping me get a better sound? Those are things that are important to assess from time to time, and ultimately I think that helps you, or at least let me back up. That may not help everyone, but it helps me just with my workflow in general, staying on track. I'm not thinking about, should I use the M1 or the Trinity or the O1W or the Karma or the Triton? I know where I'm going to go for a certain type of sound, and it helps me to be more efficient with my time. And one thing I didn't mention was the Big Sky reverb pedal that's sitting back there on top of the DW6000. That was the second reverb pedal I bought. I dipped my toe into reverb with the TC Electronic Hall of Fame 2 pedal. I was drawn to that one primarily for the left and right in and outs on it. I wanted to be able to run things through in stereo. It was a good pedal. I knew I had my eye on the Big Sky, but I wanted to make sure that I could do anything with reverb before I made the switch. So I did enjoy that experiment and ended up with the Big Sky, and honestly can't ever see a need for any other hardware reverb. On the software side, I use Valhalla Supermassive from time to time, primarily because it was free. And if you don't have that, I highly recommend that plugin. It's got some really great reverb and other effects in there. So I will leave a link to that below. If you don't have it, go out and grab it. It's worth having. So do you have a process for assessing what you've got in your studio? How do you make sure you have all the equipment that you need? How is your workflow, or how's your music impacted by what you do or don't have in your studio? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this topic. And again, I appreciate everybody joining in for these episodes. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to the channel, I'd love for you to do that and stick around, ring the bell, hit like, leave a comment. Tell me what you think about a studio setup. What's important to you when you think about making music? What things do you do in your studio to gain efficiency so that you can move at the speed you want to through music creation? Anyway, I appreciate you again sticking around. Hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you in the next episode.